Welcome to the 9th Biennial Walter Cronkite Awards for Excellence in Television Political Journalism. I'm Marty Kaplan. I'm on the faculty of the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism at the University of Southern California, where I'm the director of the Norman Lear Center, which has administered these awards since Walter Cronkite gave out the first ones here in Washington in 2001. If you're with us on C-SPAN or Facebook Live, welcome to you too from the National Press Club in Washington. If you're watching to see the prom dresses and movie stars or absence of them, that's the other media gathering in Washington this weekend. But please do stay with us. Looking around this room, I see plenty of glamour right here. In the Middle English root meaning of glamour, learning, knowledge, insight. And if you believe that's the actual etymology of glamour, then you bear witness to the epistemological loopiness of something called alternative facts, which is a wrong that good journalism tries to right. Today's award winners and networks work at networks and stations across the country. I see a number of other distinguished guests whom I'd like to recognize. You know who you are. Here's how today will go. First, before we present the trophies, I'll ask the winners in our national award categories to come up and grapple with questions about trust and legitimacy, about fake news and real journalism, about the assault on the free press in an age of alt-truth. Then we'll serve lunch. Yes, we'll actually feed you. And we'll invite each of our winners to come up and accept their awards. Joining me to present them will be my colleague at the USC Annenberg School, Judy Muller, and my colleague at the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania, Kathleen Hall-Jamieson. And winners, if you are as succinct in accepting your awards as you are on the air, we'll get you out of here in time to get back to work or to travel home or to pick up your sequins and cummerbunds at the dry cleaners. So to introduce our panel, I want to show you some clips from their winning entries in the context of Walter Cronkite's legacy. Cronkite's signature sign-off, "That's the way it is," avows that there is a way it is. It attests to the existence of reality, the reality of truth, the truth of evidence. But why do these values matter? What difference does excellence in television political journalism make?
We are not intelligent enough, we're not educated well enough to perform the necessary act of selecting our leaders for the future. We have got to improve that situation, and it's going to be, to a large degree, up to us in television and radio, in broadcasting, to get that job done. If we fail at that, our democracy, our republic, is, I think, in serious danger.
There's more fact-checking than ever, but fewer people trusting the facts. Are we moving more into an authoritarian media climate?
Do you have any qualms about asking a foreign government, Russia, China, anybody, to interfere, to hack into a system of anybody's in this country?
It's up to the president. Let the president talk to them.
Does that not give you pause?
No, it gives me no pause. If they have them, we might as well find. Hey, you know what gives me more pause? That a person in our government Crooked Hillary Clinton. Here's what gives me more. Be quiet. I know you want to, save her. That a person in our government, Katy, would delete or get rid of 33,000 emails.
I think that what we've got here is a case of overclassification. I am not concerned about it. I am not worried about it. And no Democrat or American should be either.
The questions were, Secretary Clinton, the questions were, who gave you permission to operate? Was it President Obama?
There was no permission to be asked. It had been done by my predecessors. It was permitted. I didn't have to ask anyone.
Is that true? Was Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server for official business while she was Secretary of State absolutely permitted? No, that's not true.
Look, Hillary Clinton is no friend of the media, but Donald Trump is different. Trump sought to strip the press of legitimacy, of credibility. He claimed the corporate media was part of a massive conspiracy against him.
I'm not running against crooked Hillary Clinton. I'm running against the crooked media. That's what I'm running against.
Mr. Trump, I have a question about immigration.
Who's next? Yeah, please.
Your immigration plan is
Excuse
full
me,
of
sit down.
empty
You weren't
promises.
called. Sit down.
Mr. Trump, no, I'm a
Sit
reporter,
down.
as an immigrant, and as a
Go
U.S.
ahead.
citizen, I have the right to ask the question,
No, you
and
don't.
this is the question.
You haven't been called.
No, I have the right to ask the question.
Go back to
and this is-
Univision.
No.
And the next day, they did the most beautiful story about what a lie it was from NBC. She's back there, little Katy. She's back there. What a lie it was. No, what a lie. Katy Tur.
The rest of the crowd was, just angry. They were angry. And at the end of it, one of Trump's people there got a Secret Service guy and said, he's going to walk you to your car.
You're very rude. It's not about you.
It's not about...
Get out of my country. Get out.
This is
not
my...
about you.
I'm a U.S. citizen, too.
Well, whatever. No, Univision, no. It's not about you.
It's not about you. It's about the United States.
No, it is.
He peddled so much misinformation, the journalist did take a more forceful approach than usual, debunking his falsehoods.
If you are saying he can't do his job because of his race, is that not the definition of racism?
I don't think so at all. Take a look at all the crime that's being committed. Go take a look at it.
The
Look,
research
I'm
says
going
the
to
crime does not match what you're
it
saying.
depends on whose research.
The Pew research, which is independent,
Don't
says
be naive. You're a very naive person.
Donald Trump says that Mexico will pay for that wall between Mexico and the United States. What do you think?
I'm not going to pay for that wall. He should pay for it. He's got the money.
The notion that this was a murder is a fiction born of delusion and untethered to reality and contradicted by evidence reviewed in at least 6 investigations, one of them by Ken Starr, hardly a Bill Clinton defender. To say otherwise is ridiculous and frankly shameful. Again, this is not a pro-Clinton position or an anti-Trump position. It is a pro-truth position.
Only 14% of Republicans saying they trust the news media this year. So I want to bring back our panel to talk more about this, and most importantly, talk about what journalists, what commentators, what we can all do in the media to get those numbers back up. Every day, we can either regain people's trust or lose even more of it.
A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people.
Panelists, please join me. So we have the pleasure of the winners in our national categories, winning for individual achievement in national journalism, Jorge Ramos, Jake Tapper, and Katy Tur, and the winner for national network news program is CNN's Reliable Sources with host Brian Stelter. You just welcomed them warmly, but why not do it again? Thank you. In a little while, they'll be given their trophies, and we'll have a chance to thank and say what else they want to say, but right now I would love to dig in to what we've just been talking about and the life that we are living. And so I'll just start by noting a contrast between what Walter Cronkite said in that opening, in which he described the press as the allies of democracy, the protectors of our freedom, the key role in making the public able to choose its leaders. And then at the end, the press as the enemies of the people. So what happened? What is going on when the press is called the enemies of the people? What is the agenda? What is the consequence? And are you the enemies of the people? And this is a jump ball, but I'd love each of you to have a chance at it.
I'll take it. So obviously we're not the enemies of the people. And I think it's fairly obvious at this point that the goal is to undermine any criticism. The president and his team have waged campaigns differently, but with the same goal against legislative oversight, against the judicial branch, but obviously most forcefully against us. And the goal is so that when we provide a check, that check that is so enshrined in the First Amendment, it's ineffective. And we see that it is working to a degree. There was a poll out this week, ABC News Washington Post, that showed that 32% of the country believes that President Obama spied on Donald Trump and his campaign, and 52% of Republicans believe that. It doesn't matter that Paul Ryan says there's no evidence of that, or James Comey, or even Devin Nunes, all three of whom had said that the tweets that President Trump made have no basis in fact or evidence. So undermining us allows him to say or do whatever he wants and pick off enough people to make ineffective the checks or balances that we attempt to provide, not just on wild, outlandish claims that might not actually mean that much substantively, such as this one against President Obama, but what he wants to do with this country, which I'm sure I speak for everybody. We want to cover in a fair and impartial way, but this other stuff keeps getting in the way of that.
Journalists aren't biased, and if they do have biases, our job is to put those aside and report fairly. And if we have any bias, it's a bias towards the facts. It's not because we're rooting for Hillary Clinton or rooting for Donald Trump, whatever. We're rooting for the democracy that we live in. And that democracy, its foundation is a set of shared principles, but also an adherence to truth. Make no mistake, Donald Trump is not the first president or candidate or politician to not like the press. There's long-standing tensions between us and those in power. He's the first one to go so unabashedly and forcefully against us, to campaign against us. He was campaigning against Hillary Clinton, but really he was campaigning against us, which is what he admitted. He didn't care that was out there. He wanted that to be out there because, as Jake was saying so eloquently, if we report something that is not friendly towards him, if he undercuts our credibility, if he diminishes us, he inoculates himself from that criticism, and he can do whatever he wants. He didn't appeal to the better demons of voters in this country. He appealed to their most base fears and their most base frustrations and angers, and that worked for him, partially because they didn't have a trust in the press any longer, partially because they were sick of Washington, they felt left behind, and he got up there and he said outrageous things, he refused to apologize for it, and he allowed people to feel like they can take control of their lives again. They can do what they want again. They can yell at the top of their lungs if they want, and somebody will finally hear them. Where that goes from here, well, that's a good question for the rest of this panel.
Don't look at me on that one. But I was glad to be reminded of that soundbite where he says, I'm not fighting Clinton, I'm fighting you. I'm battling you. I think we've seen that again even this week in some ways, that the president wants a war with the press, and some of his aides have described it in that way. Of course, the ground was very fertile for this in June of 2015. It's why the first time I saw you on the campaign trail 2 weeks after Trump announced up in New Hampshire, he was already picking on you in the crowd, already calling you out by name and complaining about the press. This was when he was still having small events, before he was having rallies. The ground was fertile for it because of decades of criticism of the press, mostly from the right, sometimes from the left, but largely from the right. So the ground was so fertile for someone to come along and take the subtext and turn it into text, to say bluntly what others were saying softly. This idea of campaigning against the press, we could see the groundwork for decades in the past, and for a confluence of reasons, it was Trump who took it to such a different level.
But Jorge Ramos, enemies of the people is not you're biased, you're liberal. It's something that cuts deeper.
Yeah, well, he was criticizing us because we were criticizing him. I think the first responsibility that we have as journalists is to reflect reality as it is, not as we wish it would be. I understand that. But then there's a second level. I think the most important social responsibility that we have is to challenge and to question those who are in power. So if we have a president who lies, if we have a president who made racist, sexist, and xenophobic remarks, if we have a president who criticizes judges and the press, if we have a president who behaved like a bully during the campaign, then we cannot remain neutral. I think on certain occasions we have to take a stand. And it is my position that when it comes to racism, discrimination, corruption, public lies, dictatorships, and the violation of human rights, we have to take a stand. Walter Cronkite did it. I know that many people believe that he was completely right in the middle. Well, he was not. During the Second World War and during the Civil Rights Movement, he took a stand. I have my quotes, I'll show them to you later. But the important thing is that if the president said things that are not, look, if we remain neutral with Trump, I think, we are normalizing his behavior. And he's not an example, not even for school children. And I think it is our responsibility to be critical of him. That's it. That's why we are journalists. That's the role of journalism, I think.
Is there a sense in which he's not just criticizing your particular criticism of him, that he's criticizing the enterprise of journalism, attempting to delegitimize?
I think that's a really important point. And you're right, enemies of the people is so far beyond telling you to watch Fox, not CNN. Enemies of the people, which he's only said a couple of times, but did say out loud and on Twitter, that is so far beyond. It's about dismissing the existence of a press that can report fairly on his presidency. Now, maybe because he hasn't said it in recent weeks, we shouldn't take him at that word.
We can remind him.
But it was used a couple of times, yeah. Recently.
But it's only insofar as it relates to him. This is not a free press that he hates doing journalism across the board. He will uphold journalism when it benefits him. He will retweet Washington Post articles, even though he says that the Washington Post is full of a bunch of liars. And same thing with the New York Times. He doesn't hate the press. He hates fact-based coverage of him, period.
He's doing 9 interviews this week that I've counted, including 3 today, and then another one tomorrow. And he's bringing John Dickerson on with a plane within Pennsylvania. Yeah. I mean, all of this evidence, we've all accumulated the evidence of his love of journalists when it's convenient, love of attention. It's a better word.
But were we late to this criticism? I wonder if we were late, because this is nothing new. Everyone is criticizing President Trump right now, and during the campaign, at the end, probably most journalists did it. But remember, on June 16, 2015, he said that Mexican immigrants were criminals and drug traffickers and rapists. And the reaction was mute.
No, that's not, that's the reason why I'm on this campaign, is because I did stories about that. I mean, the reaction from maybe the general public was a little bit more mute, but I mean, and you tell me from CNN perspective, but we covered that quite a bit.
But I didn't see journalists criticizing him right at the beginning as forcefully. We were giving him tons of time. And I don't think we were critical enough of President Trump at the beginning, especially when he was criticizing Mexican immigrants. After that, when we saw that horrible video, Access Hollywood, things started to change. But at the beginning, I think we were not as critical as we should have been.
But you're saying criticize. Mm-hmm. And I think sitting over here, I would say report is what we've been doing. What most of the mainstream press has been doing is reporting, not criticizing. Yes, there's been a critical tone and many, many critical guests, but I think you see, and by the way, I think one of the benefits of 2016, 2017 is the existence of hundreds of real news outlets with different perspectives and different ways of going about it. But I wouldn't use the word criticize the way you do.
I think it's fair to say that all four of us, draw lines at different places and have different takes. I mean, Jorge's show is different from my show, different from Katy, different from Brian. We all have different views of these things, and I doubt that there's any uniform way of looking at President Trump. I probably draw a line at a different place that Jorge does, and that's fine, and I respect his right to do what he does, and I assume he respects mine. My general view of President Trump is that I cover him as I cover him, as I would cover any president, and when I feel that there is behavior that violates norms of decency or truth, I will come out and say it, but I don't view everything through that prism.
So when he says CNN is fake news, is that a character attack? What's happening in that exchange?
I think first of all, I should say that of all the things that President Trump has said in the last year and a half, attacking CNN is very low on my list of what offended me personally. I was far more personally offended when he made fun of the disabled reporter. I was far more personally offended when he belittled the 5.5 years that Senator John McCain spent in a POW camp. Those two instances, I should say. Not to mention, obviously, the Access Hollywood tape, and now we're on a list, and I'm not going to keep going. But going after CNN doesn't offend me. It doesn't hurt me. It's part of I want to delegitimize my critics. And, by the way, at CNN, we have an interesting role because we are also the network that continually gets hammered from the left because we go out of our way to bring people who believe in President Trump onto our channel, sometimes as paid commentators, because I don't know if you've noticed.
Wait, we've been criticized for that?
I don't know if you've noticed, not a lot of Republican pundits in this town actually supported President Trump during the campaign. So we actually had to go out and find people like the lieutenant governor of South Carolina and the guy who managed his campaign in Pennsylvania, and those sorts of voices. So we get it from both sides in that respect. But in any case,
Do you think that paying surrogates whose job is to deliver the talking points of the administration, do you think that putting them in a co-equal position with everyone else on a panel is traditional standards of journalism?
Well, I don't think that that's what we have. I mean, we have people, Andre Bauer, who was a former lieutenant governor of South Carolina, was on my show last night. He's a Trump supporter, but he doesn't agree with everything Donald Trump does. He is as much.
But there are others who are on panels.
Okay, I mean, you'd have to.
Jeffrey Lord.
Okay. Do I think he is the same as?
Do you think paying him and others to be on these panels is what journalism at its best should be up to? Or should the voices of criticism not be voices which you can predict them bringing the White House line to the panel, instead bringing a point of view which is contrary to other people there?
Without getting into any specific commentator, I think that we live in a nation that has President Trump as president. And one of the criticisms of the media, not without some basis, is that we live in a bubble and that we were all shocked because was it Meg Greenfield or Pauline Kael who said she couldn't believe George McGovern lost because she didn't know anybody who voted for Nixon or something like that.
Yeah.
It might be Pauline Kael. It might have been Reagan. I forget who it was. But in any case, going outside of, it'd be a lot easier if Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio had been the nominee and he had won, because Republican pundits in this town are more comfortable with that sort of person. I think it is journalistic to go out and make an effort to hear from people who support President Trump. And I don't see really that much of a difference when it comes to having a liberal Democratic pundit who shares his or her views and maybe sometimes sounds as though he or she is reciting talking points, and somebody who supports Donald Trump. I really honestly don't see that much of a difference.
And this raises the issue, it's not only among journalists, but in academia, on neutrality. Should we be neutral all the time with Trump? I don't think we should. Let me do my homework. These are the quotes. These are the quotes that I got from Walter Cronkite. Now that we're right here with him, this is what he wrote. He said, early in 1943, Walter Cronkite, I reported a bombing raid over Germany. In my lead, I wrote that had just come back from assignment from hell. No one attacked our stories because they lack objectivity. If neutrality is the test of integrity in journalism, then we failed in our duty to accord the Nazis fair and balanced coverage. This is Walter Cronkite. And then during the civil rights movement, he said...
He used the term fair and balanced?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
That was before it was Kaplan.
About the Nazis.
That's okay. He said to accord the Nazis fair and balanced coverage.
All right, I wondered where that came from.
Mr. Cronkite, what were you thinking? Then the second quote is really interesting. During the civil rights movement, he wrote, basic human decency, as you were mentioning, basic human decency was making editorial neutrality futile. Not since World War II had right and wrong seemed so clear-cut, but no amount of editorial neutrality could now rescue the South from itself. So in other words, Walter Cronkite, when it comes to Vietnam, when it comes to Second World War, when it comes to the civil rights movement, he took a stand. He put neutrality aside because neutrality was not an option. I know this is debatable and controversial.
But let me ask you, if I may.
Please.
I'm sorry. So let me ask you. So
some of these people have run panels.
I'm sorry. I'm used to being in the middle chair.
I was hoping this would happen.
So, do you think that? Do you view the position that the media should not be neutral towards President Trump? Do you view every action and every policy position he takes that way? I don't think you do, based on your coverage.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. But when he's talking about, we counted, for instance, in the last 100 days, 44 times in which President Trump or his administration criminalize or demonize immigrants. Of course, that's an issue that we care a lot about. So yes, I think we have to take a stand
on that issue. But for instance,
racism.
But you don't like assume that just because he takes a position on Korea or NAFTA that he's wrong.
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
but when it comes to racism, the way his remarks about women, about immigrants, yes, I think we have to take a stand.
But let me move. I'm sorry. But Cronkite and cutting through and taking a position and not being neutral in those circumstances, I think the reason he did cut through and the reason somebody like Edward R. Murrow cut through, and the other examples you can pull from history of somebody, a journalist, taking a stand and having it resonate, is because the level of rhetoric from everybody wasn't up here all the time. I mean, you turn on anything, and the level of vitriol against Donald Trump is always up here, no matter what he says. It's very hard to cut through that, to say, no, what he's saying here actually is appalling, or actually is very dangerous, or it really is important, because everything's already here, so you can't hear it.
So when he talks about, for instance, breaking up the Ninth Circuit Court, and people on Twitter are like, "Oh my God, he's a dictator," and then, you do one round of Google, and you're like, "Oh, this has been a conservative thing that they've talked about for decades." Yeah. And that's an important point for all that I'm sure everybody here agrees with, which is that we can't give the people who are labeling us the enemies of the people, we can't give them the ammunition. We have to be reasoned, point out when things are appalling, they're appalling, but not everything is appalling. Because if everything's a crisis, nothing's a crisis.
Well, let me try something out that is appalling all the time, about which being neutral is dangerous, notionally. And that's the idea that facts don't matter, that you can make things up.
You know, I was on the this is Twitter. Sorry, just everything, and
everything blurs together.
Everything blurs together. And I tweeted something just factual. Here's what Donald Trump said, or the sky is blue. And somebody tweeted back at me, "Who are you to decide the facts? We decide the facts." I said, no, you do not decide the facts. The facts are facts. Nobody decides them. But it was emblematic of exactly what we were facing on the campaign trail every day. When you would interview Trump supporters, they did not care what we said. They did not care. They didn't want to hear it. They didn't care that Donald Trump was inconsistent. They don't care if he builds the wall or not, for the most part. They don't care what he does. They believe that when he got into office, and they still largely believe this, that he will make the decisions that are best for the country. So facts are just these little wisps of things in the wind that blow away.
If that's the case, Brian, why bother correcting facts?
Well, I don't think we're in a post-fact world or a post-fact check world or a post-truth world. I think we're only in that world if all of us in this room agree to be and if everybody else in every other room agrees to be. There are alternative realities, though. There are, to put it simply, 2 alternative realities, and then to be more honest about it, many, many alternative realities. And I think what you're describing about a certain kind of Trump supporter who is with him no matter what, that's an emotional, guttural reaction that I think we don't do a good job always expressing on television. Actually, having pro-Trump commentators tries to get at that issue by understanding the emotional reactions to any president, but right now President Trump. There were similarities with some supporters of Obama in 2009, with him no matter what. But right now it's about Trump, and I think I'm finding myself on television trying to figure out a way to convey it's not about those. It's not always about the very specific policy debates we're having. It's sometimes about the emotional reactions to seeing him in the Oval Office, wanting him to be there. So I find myself thinking about that. But with regards to post-truth, post-fact, it's only if we all allow it to be. Just because there's a alternative reality that we might label as the Alex Jones InfoWars bubble, just because those folks live with a different set of facts, doesn't mean that we're post-fact as a society.
Let me also say, there's been a lot of attention on Trump supporters, and I think that's good because the media does need to get outside the bubble. But they are a minority of the electorate, not even just a minority of the American people or a minority of the world. They're a minority of the electorate. And not all of them, believe President Trump no matter what he says. And the reason why facts matter is because when President Trump says something about the U.S. Armada being headed to the Korean Peninsula, and it turns out it's not, that becomes a major issue in South Korea during their election. Because when President Trump suggests that vaccines cause autism, despite the fact that the medical community, the respected medical and scientific communities say, that's not true, please don't say that, or else people are going to stop getting their kids immunized, that could literally have a life or death consequence. So facts do matter. And it's okay that some people don't believe them. 18% of the public thinks that they've seen a ghost. Good luck. But the idea that we are supposed to be beholden to people who don't have respect for empirical data or empirical facts is ludicrous.
But does it strike you that there is a tacit campaign to delegitimize the enterprise of fact-finding, of verification, of evidence?
That's what fake news is all about.
Do you think folks wake up in the morning, though, and say, I want to make sure I delegitimize facts today? I think they're waking up just trying to get through the day, trying to put a few points on the board, whether that's the Trump administration or an opponent. I don't know if there's a concerted effort to say facts don't matter.
Not perhaps.
But there are a lot of lies and misstatements and falsehoods being
But then at the end, when you're checking Facebook or Twitter or checking CNN or NBC, after a few months, you know who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. And then we are measuring Trump. Now we know how to measure Trump. When he lies, and he's lying about not only President Obama, but about 3 or 5 million immigrants voting, which is ridiculous, of course, or
it's about any other. They voted in all the wrong states.
Exactly.
It's a horrible conspiracy.
Actually, if you take away all the kids who are under 18, it would be almost half the undocumented population went to vote, which it's
quite an effort.
Absurd. But now it's a matter of credibility. So yeah, I know that we're concerned about fake news. The fact is that you do trust some journalists, I hope, and that they're telling you the truth. But then when it comes to the credibility of President Trump, it is a matter of it's really difficult, because if he decides to get into a war with North Korea, do we trust the president? I mean, just let's remember what happened with George W. Bush when there were no weapons of mass destruction. We're forgetting that the country completely changed, even though he was not telling the truth. What happens with Donald Trump now if he decides to bomb Syria? It's very dangerous.
It's a problem for him. I mean, in our new CNN poll, for a president, I mean, he's already unpopular to an unprecedented degree in modern polling for a president within his first 100 days. I mean, it's staggering. And then we had a poll number, I think it was last night or the night before. The percentage of Americans who think that President Trump is honest and trustworthy is 37%. That's fewer than the percentage that voted for him.
Right.
I mean, that is a horrible number for a president. And if I were him or on his team, I would really work on stopping with the falsehoods, stopping with the wild claims, because that can be rebuilt, that can be regained. The American people are a forgiving people. It's a nice term for it.
So Gallup polls trust in TV news.
Also very low, lower probably.
And 21% said that they think they have quite a lot or a great deal of trust in TV news.
That high? I think of the media as...
Congress was at 9. So.
Well, here's the thing about that. Congress is at 9, but the re-election rate of Congress is like 96%. And I think that's the issue.
You don't have gerrymandering at the networks.
I think the issue is a lot of people hate the media, but they have their channels or their stations that they watch.
Yeah, the media is a very broad brush. I mean, it can go for a whole host of things.
Everyone trusts some media. They just don't trust the same media. You mentioned, Jorge, hopefully everyone here trusts some journalists. Even the most loyal supporter of President Trump, who thinks CNN is either the Clinton or the Communist News Network, does trust Fox, or does trust Breitbart, or does trust InfoWars. So everyone trusts some media, and what I find myself wanting to do more of is figuring out what to do to reach across various aisles and figure out how to improve trust between those different bubbles or those different silos.
Some of it's our fault, though, don't you think? Some of the distrust of the media is the media's fault, I think. I think that's fair to say.
What about it?
There have been, in the last decade alone, a number of scandals where people in the media were not telling the truth. Jason Blair, et cetera, Judith Miller. I think that election coverage in general, we all were way too reliant on polling that was faulty. There is a reason for the public to have skepticism in the media, and I think we need to, I think, by the way, that Twitter, and I'm not absolving myself of this, I think Twitter in some cases has been fantastic for the media, in other cases it's been bad, because if you have a machine that allows you to convey every emotion every moment you have one, I don't think it's good for when President Trump gives into that impulse, and I don't think it's good when reporters give into that impulse. So I think there are a lot of reasons why the media still has a lot of work to do, and we need to make sure that when we do reports on President Trump and his administration, or anyone, but especially him because he has so targeted us, that we need to, like, every word, every letter needs to be right. We need to be 100% right. We need to have, made sure that we gave the administration ample time to respond to the story. I think it's just a very perilous time, and we need to rise to the occasion.
We also need to moderate ourselves a little bit and make sure that we are not, as I said earlier, being alarmist about every little thing. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than just us trying to rebuild our trust. It's kind of like trying to teach a 17-year-old to read. You got to teach a 3-year-old to read, or 4, whatever. 4. I don't have kids. 4.
It's close enough.
Thank you. No, but we should be teaching journalism in school. I mean, really making an effort to teach what journalism is in history classes and civics classes. Try to convey it. Media literacy, but this is not. I'm not the first one to say it. Cronkite said this I think it was at the '72 convention that people don't understand the media. They don't read enough. They can't just turn on the television. They've got to get out there and read not only, the front page of the New York Times, but the opinion pages as well, to find out all viewpoints on a certain subject. And it should be taught to our children so they understand why it is an important part of our democracy. That's how we are going to rebuild our trust. It's got to go from the bottom up. And we've got to be a shining example.
So there were instances in that video and in your coverage of the last 17 months or longer now, when you're interviewing the president, for example, and he says something which is not true. What do you do?
I tended to stop and try to get him to explain where he got that information, or to say, hey, that's not true, as you saw just there. The thing about Trump, and Jake, you interviewed him a number of times as well, he's slippery. He just won't answer a question. He'll just spin and spin and spin and start going on these tangents and add all sorts of, it's a word salad that he'll throw at you.
But what do you do as an
you continue to ask the question. You can spend the entire interview asking one question over and over again.
You followed up 23 times.
Yeah.
Something like that. Look, the interview about Judge Curiel, it was in June, and it was the last time he let me interview him.
I was about to ask.
It was the last time. And also,
At least you made it to June. I didn't get that far.
He had made a comment to the Wall Street Journal the night before about how Judge Curiel couldn't be fair because he was Mexican, even though Judge Curiel is American and from Indiana, obviously of Mexican heritage. And I came with a sheet of questions, but I knew that was the most important question because it was just such an outrageous comment and on its face racist. Or xenophobic. I guess technically it was xenophobic. So I had to get through it. And like Katy said, I wouldn't call it slippery though. It's more like a barge.
Yeah,
it's just more like a battering ram. Like he'll just interrupt and burst through. And look, all politicians have their own ways of avoiding questions. But I had to get to that question. It was very important. By the way, afterwards. He was very lovely in person. I mean,
well, that's what he would do. Like the press conference where he told me to be quiet. A few minutes later, he walks out. He looks at me, smiles, and says, "Thank you." I'm like, "Okay, thank you." He is a very personable person.
Does that mean
one-on-one.
it's theater?
I think to a degree it is theater. I think he understands ratings, and the Washington Post had a little item about this over the weekend, which is, why would I get rid of Sean Spicer? He gets good ratings. That is fundamentally the core of Donald Trump.
He likes the give and take. He likes the give and take.
He thinks it's good. He does think it's good theater. He enjoys the sparring. He knows that it's must-see TV. That's part of the reason why he kept doing press conferences all the time. That's one of the reasons why his aides had to say, you need to stop this.
I mean, now he's concerned about the leader of North Korea, that he lost his dad when he was 27. Actually, he's not 27, but anyway. So
he's 33 now, but he was 27 when he lost his dad.
Well,
I think that's anyway.
Well, the important thing for instance, when we decided, it's not easy to, as you experienced, to talk to Trump. When we decided to talk to Trump at the press conference with Dax Tejera, the producer here, we studied Donald Trump, and we knew he was going to interrupt us completely. So we had a plan. We were going to be asking the question standing up, not sitting down, with a microphone, so everybody could listen. And then I would keep on talking and asking my question until I finish, because otherwise he would say, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, or he would interrupt me. That's the only way.
And you did ultimately get to ask him a question, though, right?
As a matter of fact, exactly, being personable. I was ejected from the press conference and outside the room. Then came his press person, and then she told me, do you want to go back? I said, I'll go back as long as with the condition that he allows me to ask a question. And then we spoke for almost 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it was good. It was a good exchange also, as I recall.
And he said, welcome back. And I said, thank you very much. So he was personal at the end.
So is there a sense in which he got the nomination by gaming the business model of the news industry?
I think that's
knowing
a fair
how
argument.
dependent it is on selling eyeballs to advertisers, and he was reliably entertaining, and therefore he didn't have to pay for media. He was relentlessly able to get it.
I think that is a fair estimate of what his strategy was, and he said it. He said, as long as you're interesting, the eyes will watch you.
So what do you do about that?
That's a good question,
Well,
and that's above my pay grade.
There were 16 Republican candidates that didn't learn from it.
Yeah,
and a couple of Democratic candidates who didn't learn from it. I will never understand.
So what would
what
it
are
look
they
like?
going to do?
like
They're going to come out and start saying more outrageous
I mean,
things?
I think Jake has a better answer than me.
Just to do
Prime
interviews.
time rallies, interesting interviews, unpredictable comments.
Just doing a Sunday show, I just have to say this idea, it gets me so angry when people from competing Republican campaigns complain about how much President Trump, how much time candidate Trump got.
Yeah.
He did interviews. He agreed to do interviews. He stopped doing them after he got the nomination as much. But he did interviews, and we would beg for Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and all the others to come on television, and they wouldn't do it. They did it in a very old school way, the old model of on our time, on our terms, 7 minutes, when we have a message we want to get out there. And meanwhile, Trump was appearing on all 5 or 6 Sunday shows at a time. I guess.
And that was
not
the
yours,
message.
but he was going on almost as many television shows as every other Republican combined was doing that Sunday. So it's not. I don't even think it's about necessarily being interesting or gaming the system by being provocative. Although that certainly was part of his appeal. Although I think that actually is just also who he is. It's showing up. It's showing up, and also, by the way, those other guys were so busy raising money. And he was not, really. So, I mean, he subscribed to a new model of running for president, and everyone else was really stuck doing the old model.
So, Brian, on the clip that we ended with, you were talking about the press regaining its trust. What good ideas have you heard?
Oh, this is the hard part. I think we were discussing earlier some of the attributes. First and foremost, just getting it right. Jake was referring to various scandals that have received a lot of attention, in the past 10, 15 years involving plagiarism and exaggerating and other sins of journalism. Those are real scandals, real failures, and then they are magnified by partisans and by folks that want to exploit that for political reasons. When you screw up in a big way, you're giving those partisans ways to exploit it. And certainly, we've seen President Trump try to do that even with mistakes that were not significant and were not worthy of being condemned for days and weeks on end. It is those basics about accuracy and about fairness. And I think the other thing we would all agree up here about is transparency. Even though all 5 of us probably have tweets that we'd like to take back, I would like to think that for the most part, social media has encouraged the industry to be more accessible and forthcoming and open. And it doesn't just mean using Twitter and Facebook. It also means in the delivery, in the presentation, Jake, of your program, or Katy, in the afternoon, the way you speak to the viewer. I think we're seeing changes in the delivery of news that's in part influenced by social media and influenced by some of the sins of the past. These are maybe all small steps, but hopefully adding up. But I think we should acknowledge, before we talk about trust in media, there are concerted efforts to be tearing it down. And it's not that I think people wake up in the morning, partisans on either side, with a plot to do this, but there are websites that benefit from tearing down of the press. There are institutions like that. Yeah, that's right. There are business models behind this. Think about Sean Hannity's show. Sean Hannity's show is effectively an anti-media show. It's a media criticism show, but really more than that.
Isn't
he
the
wouldn't have much to talk
tweets
about
an anti-media
otherwise.
show?
In some ways it is. The criticism from the president, it is a form of poison. And I say that because we don't know what the effects are.
A form of poison?
A form of poison. When he says enemies of the people up there, that is a form of poison, verbal poison that trickles through the bloodstream. And I don't think we know what the impact is yet. We're starting to see it in polling. The divide between Republicans and everybody else with regards to trust in media is getting more severe. There will be other effects of these words. And so as we try to regain trust, I think we have to recognize how severe the challenge is from folks that are, for their own, selfish reasons, trying to erode it.
Let me ask each of you, is it a form of poison?
I think we have to wait and see.
I'm the media reporter. I can,
I think we need to just build our credibility back in the way that I had all these thoughts while Brian was talking, and now I've blanked on all of them. What did you do to me? we gotta build up and support our local news. I think local news is incredibly important in this country, and it has been. I mean, if we think that our budgets have been slashed, oh God, I mean, they're bare bones at local news departments. They barely have anybody to get their shows on the air, and those are the people who are on the front lines, really talking to everyday Americans every day. Whereas we are in New York and Washington and Los Angeles and in more of these major cities. So I think by supporting our local news ventures and encouraging people to consume both local news on television, but their local papers and their institutions, we will benefit. And I also think that we just have to, as much as Donald Trump wants to take us down, we cannot go crazy about it all the time. We just need to be even-keeled, brush it off, and move on, and don't take the bait. Continue to report on the facts. Be as fair as you possibly can be partial to the truth, and don't be alarmist when it's unnecessary.
May I disagree?
Sure.
I think we have to get it right. I think we have to be precise and accurate, because if we make mistakes in that area, then who's going to trust us? So I think we can all agree with that. But then there's a second level. And that second level is that, again, the most important social responsibility that we have is to challenge the powerful. It is our role. And if we don't do that, nobody else is going to do it. So,
Are you disagreeing with me? Because I don't disagree with that.
well, no.
At all.
But what I'm saying is that our position, I think, has to be much more aggressive. And we should not expect the Democrats to do that job. It is our job. If we don't question the president, if we don't question his lies, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? It's an uncomfortable
But you're almost
position.
saying we're a stand-in for the Democrats.
No. But
Okay.
no, we shouldn't be partisan. I mean, I was a staff with President Obama and with Hillary Clinton, as I hope I was with Trump. We shouldn't be partisan. But what I'm saying is that it is our role. Sometimes I see the interviews that on the BBC, those British journalists are really tough on everyone. I think that's our role. If we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And once we do it, then people will trust us. But if we don't do it, people won't trust us.
I think that's right, and I think we need to stand up for the facts and for the truth
that's
aggressively,
not
whether
what
Democrats
I
are
was
lying
saying.
or Republicans. I don't think you're disagreeing.
No, yeah.
Whether Democrats are lying or Republicans are lying. I think one of the issues that some viewers might have is that they discern a much more adversarial approach. Not by you. I remember. How do you say broken promise in Spanish? He would go after Barack Obama for his broken promise. He was not. They were not. They were
deportations.
On deportations, immigration. They were not fans of yours. I can attest to that. So, or mine. But I think a lot of viewers think the press in general was not as adversarial with Obama, or really probably even with George W. Bush, as we are now. And I don't think that that's an unfounded criticism. I think that there are reasons for it, including the fact that there are more mendacities coming from this White House than I've in 100 days than I can remember coming from other White Houses in 4 or 8 years. But that said, I think we should keep the attitude that we all have now, no matter who was, for the Chelsea Clinton administration and for the Oprah Winfrey administration.
Ivanka Trump.
And, Ivanka Trump.
The adversarial, I think.
Yes,
our
that's
role
where
is
we all.
adversarial. I think we have to be on the other side of power. In Spanish, there's a beautiful word called contrapoder. It basically means we always have to be on the other side of power. And if we have to choose to be friends or enemies of the president, I'd rather be another side.
The news should not make you comfortable, is what you're saying. We are not trying to bolster your personal worldview. We are trying to hold power to account,
Yes.
absolutely, aggressively where it needs to be, but also be fair and not just do it for one side more than the other side.
I think what I wrestle with up here, listening to the answers and feeling I don't have an answer to the following comment is, yes, and is that enough? And aren't we all struggling with the idea that there are these alternative universes, these what were called filter bubbles 5 years ago that are now filter prisons, that folks lock themselves inside? Some on the right, some on the left, some in the purple, some in the orange, pick your color, that folks increasingly are choosing to believe their own sets of facts. And when they see a journalist challenging the president aggressively, it actually pushes them further into their own corner. And so this is the part I don't have the answers for, but I think we all have that sense deep down inside that there is something really amiss, and it's partly social networks, It's partly the polarization of media. It's partly the Hannitys of the world that have created this environment where folks are locked in those cells.
9 interviews, right?
Not everyone, though.
He did nine interviews, President Trump, for this weekend. Count how many of those interviews. I haven't seen a single one of them.
Yeah.
Let's see how many of those interviews are really challenging President Trump.
Some are the Examiner, the Washington Times. Others are CBS, So there is a mix.
But it's going to be really interesting to see how many of them are really challenging President Trump.
I think we know.
There's a Fox interview tonight.
Okay, so the only point I'd like to make is the president says a lot of things that aren't true. He has an entire support network of people in the White House and also people in conservative media that support that. And that's bad for a thriving democracy. I have also seen a lot of evidence-free, unfounded stuff out there against Donald Trump. A congresswoman the other day making some allegation about why Jason Chaffetz was retiring that was entirely based in ludicrous conspiracy mongering. And Maxine Waters was the congresswoman. And I think that fake news is thriving on the right. It's living on the left too. And it needs to be called out there too. I see a lot of conspiracy mongering. I see a lot of speculation based on fevered theories and not presentation of facts. A lot of it is thriving because of Twitter, on the right and the left. I'm not saying, people are going to accuse me on Twitter, I can hear them right now, saying that false equivalence. I have no idea who's doing it more. I know one side has a president pushing it forward. So I'm not saying they're equivalent, but it's not healthy on either side.
Last question. Is there a danger in criticism or being an adversary that it's always framed as a partisan response?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they can say we're Democrats or that we're supporting a party. Then we have to show them that we did exactly the same thing with Democrats. But can I go back to Cronkite? We think we're in an incredibly difficult position, that we're under fire. It's nothing new. He said, Walter Cronkite, network television began to draw Southern fire during the civil rights movement. It became another one of the so-called outside agitators, stirring up discontent and telling Southern secrets. Correspondents and their crews sometimes felt like soldiers behind enemy lines. That's how they felt during the civil rights movement.
And you know something? There is a reason for the Fourth Estate to be alarmed in this era. But during the Obama era, he used the Espionage Act to go after leakers who provided information to journalists more than every other single president before him combined. So his White House went out of their way to demonize an entire network and say it's not a legitimate news organization. Not saying that this anchor or this show or this report is illegitimate, but that entire network it was not a legitimate news source. So again, I'm not saying it's equivalent, but I wasn't a fan of that either. And in terms of your question about is there a danger, I was called a right-wing hack for 8 years. And now people with pink hats are celebrating me. So I don't know that I'm supposed to really pay too much attention to it.
Final thought, Katy?
You didn't like the pink hat reference?
It has a different name.
Suddenly,
I just call it pink.
The image it called to mind was one that I tried to push away quickly.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Marty.
Final thought, I'm honored to be here, especially alongside you guys. You have been role models, actually, for much longer than I think any of you know. Jake, especially during the Obama years when you were challenging Josh Earnest and whoever. So for me, this is a truly tremendous moment, and I hope that we find a way to rebuild that trust, and I hope that we find a way to support our local institutions and back each other up, and also cool down the rhetoric on both sides. I think you're right about the left. The left is getting a little spun up too. So, good luck.
Let's recognize the power of the press. I mean, I think it's come through in this conversation. What has not happened in 100 days is notable. I don't know if I should admit this in this room. On January 21st,
especially in this
on January 21st, I was watching CNN's primetime coverage. Of course, this was Sean Spicer's rant with 5 inaccurate things in 5 minutes.
Oh, wow, that was something.
What a night. And I'm sitting on the set, it might have been with you, Jake, and Jim Acosta is on the front lawn of the White House reporting, and I think to myself, I swear Trump's going to walk out of that brand new house he has and tell Jim to get off his lawn. And to the president's credit, that has not happened. Mm-hmm. Journalists are still in the West Wing. The press briefing room is still in the West Wing. The briefings are happening almost every day on live television. They may not be as long as we'd like. They interrupt Katy's show all the time. But they are a constant presence. There's a lot that hasn't changed in this relationship in the first 100 days of the Trump administration. I think some of the fears that First Amendment scholars may have had on November 9th have not come to pass yet. It is possible we'll see uses of the Espionage Act. It is possible we will see curtailing of press freedoms and attempts to change the libel laws, but we're not there. And I think it's notable to think about the power of the press and the extent to which there are, although very adversarial relations, still relations going on between the White House and the news media. 9 interviews this week. I'd like to see them with a greater proportion of more skeptical news outlets, but we are seeing access, we are seeing interviews, we're seeing a lot of fact-checking going on, and we're seeing an enormous number of readers and viewers tuning in and consuming this material.
Jorge, are you that optimistic?
I'm optimistic with our job. I think we are doing what we should be doing. Donald Trump will be gone in 4 years or in 8 years. But I think we will be judged by how we react to him right now. This is a historic moment for journalism. And I just want to make sure that when people think about what we did today, that we were doing the right thing, even though it might be uncomfortable. No? But this is a historic moment, and we got to raise to the occasion, I think.
Jake, is it dangerous, this moment?
The Founding Fathers were unbelievably prescient. And the fact that we have a system of checks and balances that includes the First Amendment is something that we have seen happen in action. Whether it's the judicial branch sparring with the president or legislative oversight. We saw some of that this week with Congressman Chaffetz and Congressman Cummings coming out and talking about what the former National Security Advisor did. When it comes to the role that we all play. We all are still broadcasting. Newspapers are still publishing. My concerns about the media are more commercial than they are about President Trump. So I'm optimistic. I think that we all need to rise. I think that we all need to make sure that our facts are straight before we publish or broadcast. But I think we're in a great place because I think I'm hearing anecdotally that young people are inspired to become journalists. I'm hearing anecdotally people expressing an appreciation for what we do in a way that I've never encountered before in 20 years of being a journalist. So I feel good about journalism, and I just think we all just need to, stay in shape and, cut down on our sugars and our liquor and make sure we can wake up in the morning and do our job.
Well, I think Walter Cronkite would be happy to see his profession thriving in that way, if that's the case. 2 final thoughts. One is there was a Vanity Fair 60 Minutes poll that came out the other day asking people what is the most accurate or honest news source. And the one that came in at number 1 is TV News. And the one that came in last was the president. The other thought is that, Katy, you provided the perfect segue to what we're about to do, which is to also honor the people in local news who, dealing with exactly those constrained budgets and limited resources, do phenomenal journalism, and we're thrilled to be able to shine a spotlight on them too. Please join me in thanking this amazing panel.